and it was one of the coldest winters and snowiest winters on record. When my electrician showed up, he couldn't pull the cable because the vinyl on the cable was cracking every time he'd unroll the cable.
You are listening to the Property Developer Podcast, your home for tips, ideas, and inspiration to help take your developing to the next level. Now here's your host, Justin Getty.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Property Developer Podcast. Thanks for joining me. I've got a great show for you with my first international guest, Dan Barona from Canada. There is not too much to report on the project front as the building industry is shut down for a few weeks over the Christmas New Year period. We're still waiting to hear from Council about our application for the new project. We are now past the number of days that they are required to respond to us, so I've asked our town planner to start bugging them about it. On the current project, we are very close to completing the back 10 townhouses, and I'm hoping to get compliance certificates in the next few weeks once works start up again, with a view to getting those properties off to the titles office to obtain the titles so we can settle with the buyers, or at least have the titles available so that we can settle when we're ready. Settling early on those 10 townhouses will make a massive dent in our loan facility and save us quite a bit in interest payments. Okay, on to today's guest. I speak with Ottawa-based developer Dan Barona from Urbanworx in Canada. Dan has progressed from doing renovations to multi-property developments and has some great stories to share about developing in Canada. We talk about the challenges of building during bitter cold winters, dealing with organisations that issue permits, and the vagaries of the Canadian property market. I'm sure you will enjoy hearing Dan's story, and being an international guest, his answer to my first question about what food he will eat until he was sick was a little different.
I have Spanish background, and there's this plate over there called cocido, which is real peasant food. It's just chickpeas and meat, and it's all boiled together, and then you have a soup. I could eat that stuff for 4 days on end. No problem.
Well, there you go. Being our first international guest, Dan, you've certainly brought a little bit of character to the dishes that people eat.
There you go. I also like meat, my fair share of meat here. There's Western beef here in Canada. It's good beef, and grilling a few steaks on the barbecue in the summer is great.
Oh, it'd be nice. Well, it's always nice to have a good bit of meat on the barbecue, well cooked.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dan, given that you're our first international guest and you're coming from Ottawa, Canada, can you give us a bit of a rundown on your developing over there and also a little bit about the developing process?
Okay, yeah. Well, my brother and I guess, got started in developing after doing a few flips. So right after I finished university in the early 2000s, before all those shows on TV about flipping homes became popular, we were doing a few flips and did fairly well. But then the competition to buy houses was a little bit too much, so we decided to look for an opportunity to develop ourselves. And in late 2009, we found a piece of property and started the process slowly but surely. And basically, we will be finishing our first 6-unit development in early 2017. The process from basically what I understand from your podcast, which I listen to on a regular basis, is pretty similar to what you have there in Australia. We have our committees and our council, and we have to go through them just like you do in order to get the either site plan approval or the draft plan. And there's various steps depending on what it is or the density that you want to build. You have to go through different processes, which each take different. Each process has its own timeline. And once you have the go ahead from council and the city, then you're pretty much have the green light to go ahead and start constructing after obviously paying your dues and submitting your construction application.
And how long would that take to go from your initial application to getting ready to start construction?
So again, depends on the size of your project. for example, I'm putting together a what we call here semi-detached. So I guess where we bought a house, a derelict house in an up and coming neighborhood, and we're tearing it down, splitting the lot into two, and building semi-detached homes. That process from beginning to end, we got the approval in November. We're going to use the slower months in the winter to basically meet the conditions of the severance of the lot, and then we should be having a shovel in the ground in April or May. So give it 6 to 8 months, but it could be faster, obviously, for this process. And then if you're going for a whole site plan, well, then you're looking at about a year to 18 months.
Okay. And then actually mentioning the weather, that's a good point. What about construction? I presume that you can't really build over the winter months in Canada.
Well, we do. We don't really have a choice, to be honest. If not, there's not much that's going to happen. And as you know, the carrying costs to carry a project throughout the winter just wouldn't make it affordable. So we build through winter. You hope for the best and hope for a fairly mild winter like we had last year. But it happens that you do get very, very cold winters, and then it gets pretty expensive and a little bit more complicated. You aim to have your foundation and your concrete settled before the frost comes in. Once you have your foundation, the rest you could deal with. You have big 420 pound propane tanks on site with some construction heaters in the unit, and that basically helps you keep it above zero, so you could do the work fairly well. And God forbid you have to do any masonry work on the outside, because then you have to shelter that and tent it up and make sure to keep that temperature, also keep the mortar from freezing. So it does complicate things. It slows things down quite a lot. But the important thing is you don't stop, because you can't sit around and just wait for the 6 months of cold weather to pass.
All right, well, that's given me a new perspective on building through winter here in Australia. It's definitely nothing like that.
No, well, look, let me just give you a quick anecdote. Not this past winter, but the one before we were building, and it was one of the coldest winters and snowiest winters on record. When my electrician showed up, he couldn't pull the cable because the vinyl on the cable was cracking every time he'd unroll the cable. Wow. And then when the plumber came in, his glue would, if he would put it close to the heater, by the time he would leave it out for a few minutes, it would be too cold to basically cement the pipes together. So you lose a few man days of work in the winter, especially when it gets cold. But it's the reality of building in Canada, well, in Ottawa, I should say, in the winter. And if you want to be in the construction and development business, it's just an obstacle that you have to deal with.
Yeah, well, we had a really wet winter this winter just gone, so we lost a lot of days just because of rain. It's just simply too wet and too muddy for people to get in and do work. So it doesn't have to be super cold; it can be super wet.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, same. Different problems, but same result. You lose man hours.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about the Ottawa property market and the type of stock that you're producing.
Well, Ottawa is a pretty, I guess, safe, conservative real estate market. Prices are still fairly affordable in Ottawa compared to the national average in Canada. Unlike cities such as Vancouver or Toronto, which have seen incredible price increases over the last 10 years, with average home prices around the $700,000-800,000 for a single family home. Ottawa is a little bit more affordable. Quite a lot more affordable. The main difference between Ottawa and these markets is Ottawa is a little bit of a smaller market town. We're about 1 million people with the outlying areas, and we're bordered to the north by a fairly big river. So you really can't go north. You can only go east, west, or south. And the city, being the national capital, owns a lot of the property out here. We have this thing called the National Capital Commission, and they control a lot of property, and they have a lot of sway in the decisions of what gets built and what doesn't. Anywhere, the closer you get to the center of town, the more influence they have. So it's pretty difficult. But what we do, there's a good mix of a lot in Ottawa. Single-family homes are doing very well. Semi-detached homes are doing well. And for the younger or market, there's been a big condo boom the last 5-6 years. That's tapered off a little bit. There's some big condo projects that haven't seen the light of day yet because they haven't met their pre-sales targets just yet. But in the previous years, there was quite a few that pre-sold almost entirely even before construction. But yeah, unfortunately now the result is there's a little bit of a glut in that market. And unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck with units that are either unrented, unsellable, or just empty, really. But all in all, Ottawa is a pretty safe market, and we have big employers such as the federal government has a lot of people working here, and we have a lot of school boards. So employment is very steady and increasing. Ottawa also has a very high per capita earnings, as well as one of the highest levels of education in Canada. So there's a lot of good opportunity here in Ottawa, and the market, like I said, is still pretty affordable for not only investment properties but homes, residential homes to live in.
So tell us a little bit more about your current project. It's a 6-unit project.
Yeah, so it's a 6-unit project in the eastern part of town. There's a green belt around Ottawa that basically acts. There's trails and everything. So you have the city inside that green belt, and then you have a big green space, and at the exterior you have outlying neighborhoods. But back in the day, this little neighborhood is one of the only ones within that green space, and they're not increasing the size of that neighborhood. It's called Blackburn, hamlet, and we saw a house on there. Well, it's not so far from where I grew up, and I've always had my eye on this house. And one day, just driving by, it came on the market a few years ago, and my brother and I, as well as a partner, we pulled our money together and bought this little small house and renovated it, got a tenant in there while we were working on the applications to basically sever the lot and build. We had some big problems with the city, with the infrastructure. The city had told us that where the sewer line was meant to be and go, but when we actually got on site and did a survey and locate, it really wasn't what it was. So we ended up going ahead and building instead of 7 townhomes, we went with 6 semi-detached homes. So 3 blocks of 2 homes side by side, and we're just finishing that up now as we speak. All units pre-sold, so it was great. We're looking at units that were about 2,000 square feet, over 3 levels, and with a fairly big garage and driveway for 2 cars. And they very happy with the outcome of and how they sold in that area, and we set some price records for those types of units in the immediate area, and very happy with that.
And so what's 2,000 square feet in square meters?
It's just under 600 square meters.
Okay, so they're fairly good, generous size homes.
Yes.
And how big was the parcel of land?
It was about 100 meters by 30 meters.
Okay.
And it was on a nice corner lot. So we were able to sever it on the depth instead of facing forward. So all homes, basically they're not condos. There's no tenancy in common or anything. They're all freehold. So everyone has their own, their own access. No, there's no easements or everything. So that's basically what we were looking to do, freehold property, and that's what we came up with.
Okay, so it was a fairly big size lot to start with. What, about 3,000 square meters?
Yes, it was fairly big. But what I mean, the problem, well, not the problem, the curveball that came was right in the middle of our applications. The city decided to change the zoning on this parcel of land, or this section of the city. Now, we could have waited maybe another year or so and wait for the changing zoning to be applicable. And then we could have put something a little bit more dense, maybe some stacked townhomes or some, low-rise apartments or something like that. But we decided we were ready to go. We had the plans in hand. We had all the approvals from all the utilities, the neighbors, everyone, the counselor for that area. We had all the support. So instead of going back to the drawing table, we went ahead with the 6 homes.
And speaking of the plans, how did you get those drawn up? What sort of design capability or designers do you use in Ottawa to get plans done?
So we, a little bit like you guys in Australia, from what I understand, is you have architects and you have your what we call designers, but I think you guys call them draftees.
Yeah.
So you could go to either or, but for something of this size, which is based on the square footage of the building, you're not required to go to an architect. Basically, anyone who has here in Canada, it's called the BCIN number, which is your certification to draw up plans, according to code. Anyone who has that can prepare plans and stamp plans for you, up to, I believe it's 2,000 square meters on the first floor. So if you have anything that's above that square footage, then you have to go for and work with an architect. For this case, since we were underneath that threshold, we decided to work with a draftee, and he put these plans together for us.
Okay. And then tell us a little bit about the pre-selling and the finance. Was that a requirement of your funding?
No, the pre-sales, they just happened. We created a big sign and put it at the front of the property. Well, like I said, it was a corner lot, and one of the frontages was on I wouldn't say busy street, but pretty busy street. And so we put it right on the corner. We worked with a real estate agent to put it online, and we created our webpage at the same time. And along with Facebook, a little bit of Twitter, some social media, as well as the agent's help, we were able to pre-sell the 2 units right from plans, even before we had a shovel in the ground. But what we did for this development, and in hindsight, we should have done it. I would have done things differently. But for that project, we decided to build 2 units, so 1 block first, and sell, and then build the remaining 4. So those first 2 sold out. I think we sold them in 30 days from listing them. So it went really well. The reason why we did that is because the house that was on the lot was still being rented. And we basically gave the tenant notice to vacate. And once the tenant vacated, we demolished the house and proceeded building the remaining 4 units. Those took a little bit more time to sell, but again, right before construction, we sold units 3 and 4, And right when we started construction, we sold units 5 and 6. For financing, for this round, I ended up working with private investor who basically my lawyer put me in touch with when he was drafting up some paperwork. He liked the project. He liked some of the returns that we could give him, and we were okay with the interest that he was charging us, and so we decided to go with a private lender on this one, and it's worked out great. We were charged a little bit more interest than our regular lender, but the underwriting fees, the administration fees were much less, and there was a flexibility that I just called them up when I needed a draw. I gave them an estimated draw schedule at the beginning of the project, and I tried to keep it as close as possible to that schedule, which worked out. But getting that draw was a question of just making a call or sending an email, and within a couple of days, I would pick up my certified check and deposit it in the bank, and off I went. Didn't have to deal with an appraiser to come in and verify at what stage in the project I was to get the funds released or anything like that. So it worked out quite well, to be honest.
Oh, it's nice to have that flexibility, and oftentimes you're prepared to sacrifice a couple of interest rate points for that flexibility and the speed.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. If I had to do it, this investor is this lender is actually going to finance my next project, which is smaller. It's only 2 units, but he's already on board to lend us the money on that one. So I'm glad to say he's happy. I'm happy. Everyone's happy. Everyone wins. So as long as that continues, I'll continue to work with him for sure.
And how come you're going to a smaller project following this 6-unit project?
This one, it was just the opportunity. I didn't exactly look for it. It's a friend of mine that was in the business also, and he is, I guess, getting out of the business. And this was an inventory property that he had, and he no longer has his Terrion license. So just on a side note, here in Ottawa, in the province of Ontario, there's the Terrion home warranty. If you build homes with the strict purpose of selling them, you need to be registered with Terrion and register every home with Terrion. So that basically means that you have to guarantee your homes for up to 7 years. 1 year for certain items, up to 2 years for other items, foundation, anything structural, up to 7 years. So in order to get that certification, you have to do some interviews, do some tests, submit your business plan as well as projected financials. Anyways, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but once you have it, it's just a question of renewing your license year over year. So in Ottawa, you have to have that to build homes to sell. He decided to let his license go, so he couldn't build to sell anymore. And therefore, he just wanted to offload his lot, gave me a good price on it. And so I took it. It was no effort on my part to find a project. So that's why I did it.
So does that mean you have to have this license to be a property developer, or is that just if you're a builder?
Both. So you could be licensed as a vendor or as a builder, and like in my case, we're both. We're a vendor. We're licensed as a vendor and as a builder. So I could be just a developer, licensed as a developer, and work with a licensed builder to build my homes. So in our case, we do both. We act developer and builder, but I could just as well on another project basically act only as developer and subcontract the construction to someone else.
And in that case, who would be liable for the warranties?
That one would be since I'm the developer, I would put it under my warranty, but I have recourse against the builder. So if someone claims against me, I'll just turn around and say, hey, these homes that Unit 15 and Project East Coast that we just built, there's some warranty issues to fix. So he would go over there or send someone over to address the issues. But I would be the main point of contact. But if anyone has recourse against me, I have recourse against him. So it's a little bit like a chain.
Oh, that's interesting. Because here it's the builder has the warranty.
It's always the builder?
And the liability. Yeah.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah.
But when you do your developments, does the builder give you a warranty on the homes?
Yep.
Yes. Nice.
Yep.
Okay, that's
Yep.
good.
So on our current project, it's the builder who provides all the warranties.
How long of a warranty do they give you on it, or usually give you?
Similar to what you've outlined. Just depends on which element of the property it is. So yeah, it can be up to 7 years for some structural stuff.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. And then, so going with the builder, how do you go about selecting a builder to construct the properties?
Well, we do the building. Well, as much as we can, we try to do it ourselves. Urbanworx has, I guess, two arms to it. There's Urbanworx developments, and then there's, I guess, the construction part. So if we can't do it for whatever reason, we don't have the experience, or it's a way bigger project than our resources can handle. Then just acquaintances in the trades world, I'll give it to one of the builders that I know of, that I have a personal relationship with. Otherwise, no, we do it ourselves. My brother is the site supervisor. He's there every day. He aligns up all the subcontractors from the excavation all the way up to the finishing carpentry and paving at the very end. So he is our site supervisor for our own project. So not only are we developers, but we are our own builders.
And do you find that gives you a bit of an edge in terms of a bit of wiggle room on your margins?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know, as you know, and some of your guests in past podcasts have basically mentioned, not only do you charge a project management fee as a developer, but on the construction side, there's also a project development fee. So I wouldn't say we're double dipping, but we have more sources of revenue for the company by controlling both the construction as well as the development part.
Oh, that's handy. Yeah, it'd be good to have that building capability in house.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm lucky. I have my brother, who's my younger brother, who's just been in the construction business since after school. He started as a carpenter, worked his way up, was always working in the business, but always for another company. And once we started going with this, he was the first to take the leap and said, you know what, I'm gonna head this construction part, and so far it's worked really well. No complaints.
No brotherly tiffs yet?
Oh, tons of those. There's been many of those.
You don't have to go to mum and dad, do you, to try and sort out the problems?
No. And in our mid to low 30s, we tend to hash it out together without too many issues.
And then, Dan, what's the plan for Urbanworx in terms of projects that you want to take on?
So now, as of today, we're looking at a few projects. One I have my eyes on right now is have some friends that have, for lack of a better word, they've bitten off more than they could chew on this one project, and it would be to build a 10-unit rental property. So there's 10 apartments, big three-level apartment building, no elevator, just walk up. Sits on a nice lot. They've gone through the process of getting their approvals and everything from the city, but now it's dawned on them that they don't know where to get the funding or how to go ahead with construction, and they don't want to deal with that. They basically want an exit from the project and basically possibly go ahead and do it on another site. So I'm in talks with them to basically step into their shoes and build that, but that would be to build, lease, and then hold on to it. While at the same time, I'm looking at another townhome site, which we could put 7, 8 townhomes, depending. We'll have to have a chat with council to see how many they let us squeeze in there, and but we should be able to get ahead on both or one of those two, probably by summer 2017.
Okay, so a little pipeline of action coming along.
Yeah, we kind of have to. The way things are going here, we got to keep busy. And so far so good. Because if we don't do projects for ourselves, I know that we can work as a subcontractor for other developers. But that's not our model. That's not our point here. We want to do our own thing. So hopefully we can line up a few projects for the future.
And do you use the same design team along the way and consultants?
I like to basically build a team and use as much as possible the same people. But it ultimately depend on availability. I have my preferences on who I use, and I always give them first dibs on any work. But it's a two-way street. They always come back to me and say, look, Dan, I won't be able to get going on this for another 3 weeks or at least another month. So depending on availability, that plays a big factor too. There's certain people I get along with better or I like their styles a little bit more. And obviously it's natural to want to work with them again. But again, if they're not available or they can't meet my timelines, then I'll look at option B, and if not, option C. But yes, there's definitely the handful of people that I always like to work with.
So tell me, what is it you enjoy about property developing, and why did you decide to get into it?
So we decided to get into it, like I said, because we were doing flips, and those opportunities were, to flip homes. Although there's still some out there here, but they were few and far between. It wasn't as easy, and the returns on those were less and less. And also one big thing that we absolutely hated about flipping homes was you'd buy a home and then you'd tear down a wall or you'd undo something, and you'd always be stuck with someone else's problem. You'd have to fix their problem before actually addressing yours. So that was really frustrating, and we said, well, look, if ever we build, we'll do things properly. We'll do things our way and how things should be done. We had that opportunity and we jumped to it. And to be honest, we went into this a little bit blindly. It's always something that we wanted to do. When we flipped homes, my brother and I always said, one day we're gonna build a home here, or we're gonna do this. So one day, enough talk, we just jumped in, and we could have benefited from a little bit more experience, a little bit more preparation, to be honest. But again, hindsight is 20/20, right? So had I known what I know now at that time, there's a few things I would have done differently. But let's just chalk it up to a lesson learned, and it goes with the experience. But
are you ever really ready, Dan?
No, you never are. You never are, to be honest with you. Just like the other day at council on this next project, some of the questions that came up were just out of left field, and really there's no reason why some conditions were imposed, but they just decided to impose them, and what are you going to do? So no, there's nothing you could do to actually be ready, to be honest.
And what is it that you enjoy about developing?
I like, what I enjoy the most is you could have a day planned out, and seldomly does it go exactly as you planned it out. There's always a curve. There's always something unexpected that turns out, and I like that problem solving. That's what I enjoy the most is basically getting that curveball and dealing with a problem, and then successfully dealing with a problem. Sorry, I should say, and basically seeing the development through. I'm a very, very visual person, so I like to see the development go up. Like on your Instagram account, for instance, you have all these pictures of various developments and various stages. I like that. I document that also for my own files for my website, and I like to see that progress. And then at the end of it, obviously, there's something tangible that's there, that's going to be there for many years to come. I get some enjoyment with that too.
Where else do you look for inspiration?
Inspiration. Look, I like the industry in general, the construction industry, as much as I like the development industry. So, not only I read often about the contracting industry and other projects here in the United States. There's some developers here in Ottawa, some called Windmill. There's another developer in the United States called Post Green, and not that I know them personally or give them advertising, but I really like their types of developments, and I keep my eyes on them. And sometimes it's not to say I don't copy anyone, but sometimes when I see some of their projects, it just inspires me to do my own project of similar scope and size or style.
Okay. And what have you learned about yourself along the way, along this developing journey that you're on?
I've learned two things: that I'm a lot more patient than I initially thought. You kind of have to in this business, as you surely know, when dealing sometimes with council or whoever it is, or waiting around for permits, inspections, or whatever it is, and also resiliency. Being put in different kinds of positions with different kinds of problems, and then just eventually finding some solution to the issue at hand. I'm surprised myself on more than one occasions. So I would say those two things.
And what's the most difficult business decision that you've had to make in your business?
Most difficult decision has been deciding on which partners to go with in the project in this project. I talk a lot about my brother being a partner, but we also have a partner who is, for lack of a better word, silent, and it wasn't intended to be that way. It just turned out to be that way. And had I known, let's just say, I would have done things quite differently, or gone with someone else.
Okay. And if you could go back in time and talk to a younger Dan, what time would that be, and what would you say to him?
It would be towards the tail end of university, my last year of university, and I would tell him not to wait around before having a go at the development world. I waited a good 10 years between the time I finished my studies at university until I actually jumped in with 2 feet into the development world, and in hindsight, I just wish I would have started sooner.
Very common response, I have to say. And what do you reckon you've had to sacrifice along the way to get to where you are now?
Sacrificed a lot of social sacrifices. We were a very close group of friends that always did many things together, either after work or evenings and weekends. But obviously, with the development world, you're always either on the lookout or meeting agents or working like just a few moments ago. The draftee I'm working with was here at my house. We were going over some plans for the upcoming project. So on the social aspect, that no longer exists, and obviously with 2 kids, it exists even less. And then there's the family life. I've had to spend some weekends on site, working, helping also finish up some projects to make sure that we delivered them on time. So I've missed quite a few family, I guess, events or parties, and not only my personal family, but also my girlfriend's side of the family. And it's in the back of your mind, but it's a sacrifice that you make looking to the future and hoping that in the future it pays off, and you won't have to miss those things in the future because someone else will be doing that for you.
All right. Yes, sacrificing time is, again, I think another common issue that developers face, missing out on events when things are really busy.
Yeah, like I said, I've listened to a few of your podcasts, and I feel like I'm repeating a lot of the answers that people have been saying, but it's true. It's true. It's the fact of the matter. It's quite true.
Now tell us, what's your top tip for other developers out there, Dan?
Well, my top tip for developers, especially here, and it's relative to my experience in Ottawa, Canada, is to not give up. It's not easy. There's a lot of red tape and levels of government that you have to deal with, but don't give up, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel eventually, and to be persistent. Sometimes your file doesn't move as quickly through council and through the city as you would like, but it's to make those phone calls and to be polite and just get it pushed through to the next level and making sure it gets there, but to be patient and not give up.
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it, between being pushy and politely keeping things moving along.
It is, and don't get me wrong. I've lost my cool on more than one occasion and called back the next day to apologize. But it just, it is like you said. There's a very fine line.
All right, now tell us: are you a typical Canadian with a passion for ice hockey?
Yes, very much.
And so, who's your NHL team then?
Being born and raised in Ottawa, I am an Ottawa Senators fan. Not having exactly the best season so far this year, but it's still fairly early. I don't think we're going to win any championships or anything, but second half of the season is looking it's looking promising. We have some young talent. It should be the future looks pretty good.
All right, Dan, where can people find out more about you or about Urbanworx?
Well, we're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're at Urbanworx, Urbanworx Developments on Facebook, and we have our webpage, urbanworx.ca. And my contact information is on there, but it's really easy. It's Dan Barona at urbanworx.ca, and you could reach me on there pretty much anytime.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being the first international guest on the Property Developer Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the time. It's the first podcast I've ever done, and it's been really enjoyable. So thank you for the invite, Justin. Greatly appreciate it.
No, it's great to talk to you and hear how things are done over in Canada. We wish you all the best with your projects and keep us updated about how they go.
Thank you very much. I definitely will, and I'll be listening to your podcast, regularly. So keep up the good work and keep up bringing the good guests. It's very interesting. Keep it up.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Dan Barona. It was interesting to hear about the developing process in Canada and how it is fairly similar, and also that many of the challenges are the same as here in Australia. Here are the 3 lessons I took out of the discussion. 1. There will always be obstacles to overcome. It doesn't matter what state, territory or country you are in, there will always be challenges you will have to overcome with your developing, whether that's dealing with councils, finding a site or determining the best product to build. So you need to anticipate these problems and solve them along the way. 2. Development costs need to allow for local conditions. Dan talked about what is involved with building in Canada over winter and having propane gas heaters in place. This is a good point about being aware of all your development costs and including them in your feasibility and project budget. Each area will have its own consideration, and you may need to allow for rock removal if rock is known in the area, or extra costs for footings and foundations if the soil at your site is poor. 3. You can seek inspiration from international projects and developers. Dan mentioned how he likes some of the projects being done by US developers and how they inspire him. It reminded me that you can look further afield than your local market for ideas and ways to design and deliver projects. Are you looking abroad for great developers and exciting projects that can inspire you to try something new? In the age of Google and the internet, it is easier than ever to find and follow great developers around the world. Alright, that's just about it for episode 27. Thanks for listening in. Remember, you can find me on Instagram at Property Developer Podcast for my latest property development pictures and videos. And you can find all the previous episodes of the show at www.propertydeveloperpodcast.com. So until next time, may all your electrical cables unroll without cracking from the cold.
You've been listening to the Property Developer Podcast. Tune in next time for more tips, ideas and inspiration to take your developing to the next level. For more developing love, make sure to visit propertydeveloperpodcast.com.